transfer. So anyone here, do you guys know Vietnam? Have anyone heard of Vietnam? Can you raise your hand? Oh, sure. Thank you. I thought no one's know. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you briefly through the Vietnam climate. So we have a tropical and monsoonal climate. And the local climate have a wide variation. So each parts of the countries mostly have like a different kind of climate as well. So that would be one of the difficulties and challenges that faced by reporter and as well as the people there. And we are highly prone to disaster. Mostly in 2025 itself, there's already 11 typhoon or tropical storm affected make landfall into Vietnam. So I'm going to talk mostly about typhoon and landslide because that's what Vietnam is facing currently. So when you talk about the topic, turning science into public awareness, I will raise 3 of the main challenges that Vietnam are considering facing right now. The first one, and I will make into 3 keywords, which are, the first is audiences. So the new audiences in Vietnam in 2025 is diverse across all age, all region, and preferences. And Vietnam is also home to 54 ethnic groups with more than 90 languages. So that's a lot to handle. We divide it into 8 language groups. So the first challenge is that how can we report and update on the situation in all of those languages to all of those ethnic groups. And our initial solution is that we're creating channels specifically focused on regions in the countries itself. And the second challenge is coming from platforms. So the trend in 2025 in Vietnam show a strong shift towards digital platforms, and I think it's the same in other Asian, Southeast Asian countries as well. So we have to change our platforms to update news, to update current affairs to all the audiences. And accessing new via social media network among younger Vietnamese is also very high. With 44% of 18 to 24 years old and 38% of 25 to 34 years old citing it as their main news source coming from. So we are currently transforming and moving to other platforms as well. So beside the television, traditional television, we are doing OTT, we are doing news on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and on TikTok as well. And the third challenge is the format. How can we diversify the format? Initially, there are on-site reports where we do on the field, on the scene with the disaster coming. We do weather forecasts, which are details and localized information with visual implementation. We also do expert interviews. And one really new thing that we are adapting is live streaming. So every day at night, we'll do a live stream section, a Q&A live stream section with 2 of a forecast anchor. Just doing Q&A with all the people, and daily we receive hundreds of thousands to millions of watchers, of live streamers looking at it. Yes, okay. I think this is for the later part of the presentation, and that will be like the main 3 challenges. I will make it into 3 keywords. The first one is to discover insights. The second is to digitalize the contents, and the third one is to diversify the formats. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that's... Yeah. Thank you so much. I think that's a great start to the session. I would want to now move to Ilakia to know a little bit from your context. What do you think is the biggest gap when we talk about moving from audience, moving from the science to the public awareness and to action? Yeah.
I guess I would put it as 2 things. You know, at the beginning you said you wanted to see whether which session gains more traction, right? Before lunch or after lunch. Very similar concept when it comes to climate change and sharing the news, I think, really, because the interest, the attention and the focus, it keeps moving away. And I think audience, the span of interest or that they give us for TV, maximum 1.5 minutes. You lose them in that 1.5 minutes, you're done for. What's the point of having a 30-minute news, right? And similarly, when you look at other formats, like what Anne has just alluded to, we are moving into digital, we are moving, and he even mentioned about live streaming. And all this in the ask of telling people to pay attention. And like I said in the previous session itself, climate change, climate sustainability, recycling, when you talk about typhoons for that matter, storms, these are keywords that people are so used to listening in, day out. They're just so tired. It becomes so normal to them. So I think as journalists, as media professionals, the biggest challenge is really to get them to listen into this matter. And the second thing that's also a huge gap is the way we present this to them. So one is getting their attention, the other one is giving those information in the best possible format to them. And that is where we have to keep using different kind of ways, right? Hopping on technology, hopping on AI, whatever good that comes our way, we try to see how we can kind of manifest it into things and formats that will gain the attention. So these are two things.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's hear from you, Mr. Raman, a little bit about the work that you're doing at PTV, and then if you can tell us what do you feel is the most important thing to close this gap.
First of all, I would like to introduce PTV. Pakistan Television is the only state broadcaster in Pakistan, and it is broadcasting since 1964. And now it has 8 channels, and some are of regional languages channel. So the biggest issue is that PTV has to include all these areas, remote regions. So they are broadcasting for these remote regions too. So in the modern context, you know that it is difficult to manage all these things, right, because you have remote regions, different languages, and some areas are too remote, like tribal areas. So it is difficult to include all those areas. But still PTV has transformed some things that they are taking seriously, climate change. That you know that recently we acquired a movie, a very special movie about cloud burst. So it is first of its kind in Pakistan that we on-aired it on our digital platform and on PTV News and on PTV Home. Basically it is about the phenomenon of cloud burst and the role of community, basically how communities see these issues, and that how we can change the behavior. Basically climate change is the issue of behavior, that how we have to change the behaviors of the people, that they understand this issue. First is the realization that climate change is an issue. Right. So most of the people still don't think that it is an issue. Yeah. So through this movie, they included community, that how our religious leaders, our tribal leaders, our elders, they can contribute for the inclusion of all the people to understand the phenomenon of climate change.
Absolutely.
So we are trying hard. It is difficult, fundings are required, and there are different issues. But still we are struggling, and I hope that in the coming days, it will be very successful for us to accommodate all these things.
That's great to know, and I really hope so too. I think it's very interesting to hear, from Anne about how he was talking about formats and it's, the world going digital. While you're talking about how, some people work, in the rural areas, it's very important to break down climate change for them as well. So I think the spectrum that we are handling here is very difficult, but a challenge for us to solve. Let's hear from you, Vishwa, coming from the side, the academic side. What can you tell us, where do you find the biggest gap? Tell us a little bit about your work with jellyfish as well, and then,
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. I represent scientific community, and I am not a journalist or media professional. I studying about jellyfish, and I started studying jellyfish in 2019, and at first it was purely for the scientific curiosity. But then, after observing environment very closely and went to the fields and coastal areas, I realized that there was something happening, something important, but something unusual is happening. That is, this jellyfish population is increasing rapidly, forming huge blooms and cause many negative impact on fishing industry and tourism industry. As I continue my research, I understand the causes, that they are not jellyfish are misbehaving, that the main drivers are the climate change, pollution and the eutrophication. But the thing is, the gap is, the people see that the blooms are increasing year by year, but they can't understand why they are happening and what's going on. So when I talk with the people, actually they ignore it, even they can't understand the situation. At that point I realized my role was not just studying science, I need to transfer this message to the people the way they can understand. So then I started developing jellyfish products. Then I broadcast this message through the mainstream media and the social media. And we highlighted that the jellyfish are the sign of environmental impact, and we developed this jellyfish product using excess and harmful jellyfish in the environment. And meanwhile, we encourage people to remove this jellyfish bycatch from the environment in sustainable way, and we help to people to understand the causes. So during that process, the main main gaps I identified is there are many scientific research. Science identify many problems and solutions, but people remain unaware about many of that things. Mainly because of the language barrier, many scientific publications are in English and are not translated into the local languages. And only very few people have access to the reliable scientific publications. Other thing is, I see there is a lack of communication between media community and the scientific community. Mainly because of even the language is same, the language of science, and different with the language of media. Due to that reason, the scientific results are not turned into the clear and simple message and culturally relevant message that people can trust, understand and use to their day-to-day life. That is the main gap.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that, because I think we've also heard other speakers since morning who've been saying about how do you break down the climate science in a way that the audiences understand and then they act on it as well, right? So, I mean, for example, saying 100 mm of rain, right? 100 mm of rainfall is very normal to say, but is the audience understanding and acting upon it, that it might mean that there's going to be too much rain and they have to take care of it. I have one question for the audience before we come back for another round of questions here. How many of you can say that you have heard or you've watched a climate story and you've started doing something in your life differently? A show of hands. That's great. There are a couple of people I see. I'm not going to call anyone on the stage and ask you to narrate it, but it'll be good to just know if there are climate stories that you've heard and you've watched and it's made any difference to your lives anywhere. And I think if this is a question to this community and we only have 3 or 4 hands up, can you imagine the problem we are in right now? Because I think that's the gap, right? I mean, these are people who are still we're all media professionals or coming from, the science, climate science, we are scientists, researchers in the room. But if we don't feel that there has been any story that's impacted us and, we've acted on it, I mean, try and understand the audiences outside this room. So I think it's a very, very important problem to solve. We have to talk to, not just, bring out information, but talk to people's emotions, right? That's where we see action. On that note, I just want to take it back to you, Anne. You talk to the viewers day in and day out, right? You're broadcasting on your television. Tell me, how do you strike that balance between scientific accuracy as well as engaging your consumers?
Okay, so can I have my slide back up? I think I will have only 2 keywords for this. The 3 keywords first, the 3 Ds is discover, digitalize, as well as diversify. And now I'm going to do a 2P. So first is prioritization, and second is positivity. So the prioritization here I want to mention is that there will be times when the disaster hit. the nation, the people, and there will be time when there's calm weather. And those two times, there's no perfect balance for like translating science into everyone awareness if there's no timely update. So in the times of when the typhoon, for example, make landfall, you cannot make them sit down in front of TV and make them watch a TV show, a talk show of like climate change or disaster prevention, right? So, okay, I'll move on to the slide. So I think we should prioritize which time should we focus on. During the disaster time, we should focus on on-site visual. We should focus on authentic sound or simple and non-technical language, because that's like when the typhoon hits, people, it happens in a nick of time. People have to act quickly. They do not have time to focus or watch a long show, right? We have to focus on update timely and regularly. We have to do it on multiple platforms in synchronized, as well as the information have to be verified. And then there will be time in calm weather where there can be like infographics, you can do charts, you can do a long talk show, or even a reportage on climate change and disaster prevention. And they will have the time to look at it, to assume it, to consume it, right? And the second keyword is positive and hopeful message. So I don't know if this is a thing about like Asian or Asian Pacific parents. If they see, my parents in particular, they see the news all the time because the sun's on it. But when they watch too many news about typhoon, about accidents, about conflicts around the world, they tend to have a worry that you should not go outside, you should not do anything, just stay home to be safe. And that's not the case here. You have to do something in order to protect the world. You have to do something to protect yourself, your people. And that's why, besides the story that related to disaster, that usually are related to like sad story or fatalities, we should have stories that bring hope, initiative, new ideas, the youth-led ideas, for example, so that people can have a better hope for a future of ours. And that's the two key word I want to point out.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think absolutely less of doomsday messaging and more of positive storytelling, so that people are more hopeful and they can be motivated to act. Thank you. Coming to you, Elakia, you're from Singapore. The world has gone very digital there, which also means that there's a lot of clutter in the in the content that people are seeing. How are you ensuring that what you're saying is sticking with people, and digital platform is not keeping them away from the right messages, and you're breaking the clutter?
So you're right, in Singapore, I think everyone is very digital first. I just want to add on to An's question, if we can't make people in Vietnam, in Sri Lanka, in Philippines, and other countries which are largely hit by a lot of natural disasters, you can only imagine how challenging it is to make the people in Singapore understand. And why I say is because in Singapore, we're geographically in a very safe kind of a position. We have never experienced earthquakes. We have never experienced, high tides or floodings that are massive, typhoon storms. So then it becomes even more challenging because the people feel very distant from this issue of climate change. Being in it and understanding is very relatable, but when you're not in it and you are asked to be relatable, becomes extremely challenging, because then people are not able to understand or even imagine or connect to the concept of why we say, hey, do not throw your paper or your boxes away, recycle them, because when you recycle, we reduce, and then you are kind of like bringing down this, and all goes down to carbon emissions. But so in Singapore, what we do then is we reverse engineer a bit. Like you said, people are very digital front. So what we do is we talk about how digitalization also gives to carbon emissions, in the concept of trying to understand that people will be able to connect with it. When you scroll on your phone, we all watch reels, right? We all watch digital media, we all watch Netflix, YouTube, whatever it is. As you watch them, you are in turn individually kind of like putting yourself through a couple tons of carbon emissions a year. So this was one of the latest story that we told for people to really understand the connect. doesn't mean you are digital means you're not, throwing away things, or you're not burning petrol or diesel and stuff like that. But just you consuming those information online also brings us to the fact that you are also contributing to carbon emissions. So there are lots of spectrum, as you've mentioned, about emissions that's happening and climate change and the impacts that reach out to it. So this is a way that we, I think, not just the government, but also in media, we try to kind of find which are those quiet nuances that are usually not touched upon to try and make them understand. Yeah.
I think personalizing the message is very important, right? Whether it's Vietnam, Singapore, yeah. Coming to a very different world, I think, one of the most vulnerable, climate vulnerable countries, Pakistan. How do you build the credibility and trust when you talk to the audiences that, they should be able to trust the information that's going out to them? And that's what will make them act. So, of course, there's resource constraint, there's politically sensitive environment. So just talk us through a little bit of your process.
Basically, people, they trust PTV. You know that it is a state media and they are broadcasting for a long time. So people trust because PTV, they are very careful about the dissemination of information. They are careful that fake news are not transmitted to people. Because you know that in Pakistan there are a lot of free media now. We have private channels, social media influencers. So they do their stories, and sometimes they create hype in the country that something is happening that actually that not such kind of that emergency, but they create it. So as a public broadcaster, PTV is doing its effort. That they are also using, you can say that translating science into stories, that the people believe that they are giving us right information. So they act according to the information we provide them. So there's a lot of things that needs to be done, because you know that things are changing very fast. But when you have to deal with the people in far-flung areas, you have to provide them something that that is easy to understand for them. Right. Because when you broadcast in regional languages, it is easy for them to understand their language. And the people who are very close to them, they give them importance and they respond to them. So we have a lot of issues. We have funding issues that it is a public broadcaster and have to rely on government. But still, government is very serious to tackle this issue. You know that our carbon emission is 0, but we are facing huge devastation. Recent flooding was huge. Yeah. Cloudburst phenomenon, and there were a lot of deaths. More than 2,000 people died during these recent floodings due to climate change. So I thought, I witnessed that this year people felt that it is an important issue. So now they are paying attention to this climate change issue. I think formerly they were taking it lightly, but no, even ordinary people, they are very serious. They think that something is happening, and we have to do something to tackle this.
Yeah, I think it's very clear. Keep it positive, keep it personal. I mean, and sometimes when people are seeing, lived realities on their own, that's when, they're acting on it.
But I think we have to create good stories.
Absolutely.
We can use animations. We need to create content for the kids. Yeah. And we need to educate the kids. We need to educate, and we can add subjects about climate change in our schools that they need at this level.
Yes, start them young. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Moving to you, Vishwa, very quickly. You already mentioned, right, the gap between science and how are we, what is it that's there in the reports, and how do we make the scientific language into something that people understand? How do you think academia can help? Being from academic and research background, how do you think you can help this process?
Actually, there is a mismatch between media and science. The major reason for this mismatch between what science produce and what journalists are need, it because of we are human, and human are focus deeply on their own expertise. So that is the nature of human. Both scientists and the journalists have very important role in the society, but they follow their own rules, they have their own limitation, and they go their own pathways. Because of that, the production of science is not effectively transferred to the general public. So actually academia can help effectively reduce that gap by we can actually conduct communication training for scientists and the collaborative workshops and the providing simple and clear research findings to the journalists written in simple language. That will be help, and that not only help to increase the people understanding, we can also encourage people to participate in the problem solving in this disaster management and the things.
Yeah.
I think
so
that
basically design with the community, make them a part of what's happening. Great, thanks. My last question to all the panelists, we'll do a rapid fire. We'll take 1 minute each maybe across the table. What is that one thing that you think needs to be done to make it more impactful climate storytelling? And anybody can go first. We're not going the same order again. You want to go first, Ilakia? Okay.
Sure. So I think 1 minute, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll have which is regeneration. So I think some might argue that when you watch a movie, people tend to like sad ending because it's leaving a more lasting impression. But I think data already show that most of us want happy ending. But now we have to upgrade it to another level, which is open ending. The open ending here is that what can we do? And then after you asking the question when you saw something, you have to ask more, what can we do more in order to save our planet, in order to change the climate in a better way, or to prevent disaster? I think that will be the story that people want to see more in the coming years.
Very interesting, yeah. I mean, how do you make people come to that level that they want to do more? But that's very interesting. Who wants to go next?
Okay, I can go.
Okay.
So I think I'll try to make it more relatable. Relatable from a journalist point of view, relatable from, a government, civilian point of view. And really because I think, just take our households for an example, right? If you cannot connect to the problem that's happening back at home, you will not take any action. You will not take any steps. And now we're talking about the world where all of us live in. And if this is our household, you have to make people feel relatable to it. You have to connect with it. And I think that responsibility is in the hands of a journalist, myself, to connect with Vishwa, for example, get the most important, the most succinct information that will make the most impact to the civilian who's receiving it on the other end of the spectrum. And if I cannot do this in a very easy and a smooth way to transition, that story will never be able to make that impact. And this story that we are talking is not just about TRP. It is a change. It is something that is going to happen to the earth, to the place that we call home in different parts of the world. So I think relatability and accountability really matters, and it's one thing that we need to empower the change, not just within ourselves as media professionals, but you bring this message across.
Yeah, absolutely. I think rightly said, if climate is a data point, I think people will just file it away, right? I don't know how many people are going to act on it. But if you make it personal, if you make it urgent for them to act, if you talk to their hearts and minds, not just the minds, I think that's when you see action in what's happening.
So we need to create inclusive content, easy to understand for people, because science concepts are very difficult. So we need to include all the segments of the society. So we need to create content, especially related to climate change, that is easy to understand, so people respond to it.
Perfect. Thank you. Vishwa.
I think storytelling will be more effective when we focus on understanding, engaging and communicating through the different platforms. It will be helpful.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think what we've learned overall is the science is keeping up. We're going to all see, how tech, AI, how things are progressing, but storytelling is not really, and I think that's where we need to invest more. I think with that, we'll end the panel. Thank you so much to all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Varinder. It was a very quick session, but on the spot. So we will continue day one with the next session, No One Left Behind, Inclusive Climate and DRR Communication for All. And the moderator for this session is Ms. Krishna Karki. She is a DRR, Climate Action, Humanitarian Response and Development Professional. Ms. Krishna, the floor is yours.
It's okay. Okay. Imagine a young girl in a remote village, a person using sign language in a busy city, and a youth journalist crafting a climate story from their home, all hearing the same warning about an approaching cyclone. Understanding it clearly and acting on time. Now imagine if some of them didn't. That's the gap we are here to discuss today. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the sessions on No One Left Behind, Inclusive Climate and DRR, Communication for All. Thank you all for being here and those who are joining remotely. We live in a time when climate change is not just an abstract concept. It's making disaster more frequent, more intense, and more unpredictable. But here is the thing, risk doesn't fall equally. Some people are hit hardest, not only because of where they live, but because who they are. Children, women from marginalized background, persons with disability, indigenous community, young people, and those who live in remote and low-income areas. For warning system and disaster communications to save lives, they must reach everyone. That's what No One Left Behind truly means. So today we are privileged to hear from a speaker of experts who brings different but deeply connected perspective on how to make risk communication inclusive, effective, and empowering. I would like to introduce our distinguished speaker, Ms. Biana Magbitang. I hope I pronounce well. Regional Director of Climate Tracker Asia from the Philippines. Brings her experience on youth-led inclusive climate storytelling. Her work empowers youth journalists in Asia to tell stories that matter, giving voice to the most vulnerable. And she is joining remotely. Our next speaker is Tyne Logan, a weather newscaster with ABC Australia, National Climate Team, will talk about making weather and climate communication accessible across platforms, especially for audience who are often missed out. She is also joining remotely, and I would like to welcome her even in the screen. From Sri Lanka, Ms. Senali Vijaya Surya, communication specialist at Child Fund, will share how community-driven strategy help to reach children and vulnerable families with life-saving information. So welcome, Ms. Sonali. Our next speaker is also from Sri Lanka, Mr. Arus Balala, a young journalist with Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, will bring a youth perspective on how climate reporting can become more inclusive and relevant. And last but not least, Ms. Michelle, I think I pronounced well, Michelle Belleno, Director of MEI and Women Activist at Uni Global Union, will speak on why gender perspective communication is crucial in climate and DRR context, and emphasizing how we can elevate women's voice in building resilience. So together they will help us explore practical ways to design risk communication that is accessible, participatory, and rooted in the realities of communities. So, first I would like to invite Ms. Piana. She will share some of the powerful examples of young people led and where storytelling become a bridge to reach those who are often unheard. So, welcome, Ms. Piana. Not working? Can I move another?
So I hope you can, no. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we are hearing you.
As I was I'll be able to join you today, but here I am joining you online. Again, I'm from the Philippines. I work for Climate Tracker Asia, and we are a non-profit media organization. So we are a non-profit media organization in helping, training, and incentivizing emerging and next-gen journalists for them to get much more better climate stories, compelling climate stories for that matter. I work with young storytellers across Asia, and I'm sharing what we are learning around about what makes climate and disaster communication actually reach people, especially for those who are actually often missed by mainstream media. So, we've had a lot of projects working with Gen Zs and millennials across the years since we started doing our work in 2015. We've had projects with content creators, journalists wanting to be content creators learning the journalistic ways, and also students, campus journalists. And this is what we saw, what actually works in youth storytelling. I really wanted to be honest that effective youth climate communication is not complicated. What works is very simple. Youth understands
I think she is mute. Miss Prerna, we are not hearing you.
again. Sorry, I muted again. So I don't know which one you. I'll just start my
30
presentation
seconds.
again. So start from the start of what I've been talking about, what actually works in your storytelling. As I've said, I really wanted to be honest with this. Working with the youth in being a youth representative myself, we realized that effective youth communication is not complicated. It really is very simple, especially because the youth understand their own families and neighbors and what their community, what information that their community consumes. So they know which Facebook groups, Messenger groups, Viber groups, WhatsApp groups that the people in their community trust. They know which words people use in everyday conversation, and they know what actually works and what doesn't work within their community. So through all of the programs we did, including our Content Creators Hub, which we did in collaborations with content creators in Southeast Asia and journalists in Southeast Asia to learn from each other. So journalists wanting to learn to be a content creator, and then content creators wanting to learn to be journalists, or like learning how to research or do their information, or how they will be able to produce their content in a journalistic manner. We've seen that when young people tell stories in their own voice, using tools that they already know, and that's when actually people listen more, and they basically do not become climate experts overnight, but they become more aware and they start asking questions, and it's for us already a movement. But there's so many things we still struggle with, and that for us is very important. Youth still struggle to be heard at national and even regional levels. Many are invited only as a youth segment, for example. Many are never paid because they're young. Many are asked to share trauma or stories, but are not given editorial power. This is something we see again and again in the climate conversation, that the youth is not taken seriously. We know that the young people are not lacking talent, but they're lacking access and they're lacking trust, and basically their space. So here's one thing that I really want to impart to members of the APU and the audience. If I could give one recommendation to media and broadcasters as a journalist and broadcaster myself, it would be this. We need to stop extracting stories from communities. We need to start building relationships. We have to stop waiting for disasters to find youth voices. We need to stop inviting communities only when there is tragedy. We need to invest in them before the tragedy happens. We need to work with them before the disaster strikes. So we will be able to help them shape the narrative and not just appear in it. Because inclusion, if we're talking about it, it's not a one-time invitation. It's a long conversation. So if we really want our stories to be inclusive, we need to co-create these stories with the community. And just very briefly, we are also developing something called Climb Up, and hopefully I'll be able to share this with you when it's already live, but it's still in progress. It's a mobile-first learning platform we are building to help young storytellers to access climate and disaster communication tools more easily. So it's a gamified version of climate learning. So if you know Duolingo, that's the idea behind it. So we want it to be easily accessible and gamified, especially for those who only have a phone and limited community. So it's not a finished product, it's a work in progress, but the intent is simple. We want to make learning more accessible to people who are closest to risk, and that is the heart of everything I have shared today, that climate communication only works when but the people most affected are not just informed but included. So yeah, thank you very much, and I
thank you, Ms. Diana, for sharing your learning and experience.
So far away. Lastly, no one is left behind when we stop talking about people and we start working with them. So let's work together. Message me. I'm just one email away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diana, for sharing your experience. Please stay connected. There may be any questions from audience later at the end of all presentations. So now next I would like to invite Ms. Diana Logan from ABC Australia, and she will share about the approach to accessible weather and climate communication for diverse audience. So she is also joining remotely. So welcome, Ms. Diana. Ms. Diana?
Hello. Yes, we're here. Hello, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, like Diana, I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to make it there tonight. So I am a journalist in Australia. I'm the weather reporter with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and I'm a part of the climate team. So I just thought today I'd share a little bit about, the role that I'm in, what I do within that role, what our climate team is, and then some of the lessons that I've learned as someone who's spent the last, 5 to 10 years reporting on climate, on what, I guess some of the tricks, I think, in how to make a story cut through to different audiences. So I guess just to start with my role, next on this, oops, there we go. So I have worked with the ABC across most of my career, a whole lot of different roles. I started as a journalist in ag, I went into radio presenting and producing. I was the weather presenter for the nighttime TV news, and today I'm in more of a journalist reporter role. So my round is weather. That is a very broad round. So really it can be anything from forecast stories to community impact stories. And quite often it is climate change trends and how they're impacting our day-to-day weather. It is a multi-platform role. So primarily my work goes to the website in the form of a written article, or it goes to social media as a video, TikTok, Instagram, that kind of thing. But, also I'll file to TV, radio, YouTube. I've done a podcast. And really, really it's the full spread. And I think that's one of the great things that the ABC does that can help, get our news to a range of different people, right? People are on different platforms, people are consuming news in different ways. So the more you can get out there, the better it's going to be. Just quickly about the climate team. So my role was not always a part of the climate team, but in 2022, the ABC created this team, which basically just took a few different reporters from around the organisation who were already working in climate/energy and weather spaces and put us under one umbrella. And the idea was, they wanted to put people who were already doing work in the climate space together in a more organised fashion, so that our coverage on climate change, which affects everyone, would be elevated and a bit more organised. Now, in terms of what I've had to learn about what works and what doesn't, I do hear a lot that people feel like there is a fatigue with climate change related stories. And, I think there is a truth to that, but I do not believe that people aren't interested in reading about climate change and learning about it, or that they won't read about it. So I've come up with a few key things that I think help a climate story cut through. The first of which, my golden rule, is that timing is everything. I think this can make or break your stories. So what I've learned is that you want to be publishing your story when it is just coming into people's consciousness. So not so far ahead of the game that people aren't thinking or caring about it yet, but not so far behind it that they think they already know and they've moved on. And I think weather can actually be a really good tool for helping with this. So just as an example, you know, there has been so many occasions where I've heard about a fantastic story, not a fantastic, but a really interesting story relating to heat, but it's the middle of winter, right? And so the story just doesn't cut through because no one wants to read about the heat when they're cold. But during summer, when people are feeling hot themselves, that's when they're thinking about it, and that's when we tend to get a lot more interest. So what I'll actually do is I will write a story, or I will earmark it, and then I'll just wait until I think it's the right moment that people are starting to talk about it, and that's when we'll hit publish. The second thing that I think can help is just finding something that is going to tap into people's curiosity. So unfortunately, I do think the word climate change doesn't always do that, and that's not because people aren't interested, but I think people think they already know the story. So what can help is you can lead with something that captures people's curiosity, and then I like to say hide the veggies. So human interest stories are fantastic ways of getting people in because people relate to people. But another tool that I think is really helpful is to pose a curious question. So the example I've got up here is from a story I did recently about Perth's dams, which asked why after Perth's wettest winter in 30 years are the dams not full. Australia's got a huge amount of interest, but to tell you the truth, it actually wasn't all that new. It was just a new way in to a trend of 50 years that we had told quite a lot at the ABC, and that trend is that rainfall has been declining substantially in southwest WA, and it's been having a huge impact on water supply. But, you know, at the time, people were talking about the rain. People were assuming the dams were full, and so this kind of question of why aren't they tapped into that curiosity, and I think you can use that tool quite a lot, and I do use it quite a lot. My third thing is that you've got to put climate change into the context of people's lives. So this is a bit of an extension to the previous point, but I think, you know, weather is a fantastic way to put climate change into context of people's lives. You don't have to wait for a disaster, but people know weather, they experience weather. It's something we talk about every single day, and so people can naturally relate to it. And they want to know about it. People love talking about the weather. The other thing, though, that people connect with and people can relate to is other people. So people connect with people. Hearing from people in the community and how a certain event is affecting them or a certain climate change trend is affecting them, that will always make something feel more real. My fourth tip is that, my fourth lesson that I've learned personally is that platform matters. So I personally don't think there is one platform that engages people more than others, as long as you tell that story in a way that is appropriate for the platform style and the people that are using that platform. So I've attempted to kind of come up with a bit of a summary of my read of who and what people are chasing different platforms. With this slide here, I won't go through all of them, but I do just kind of want to highlight social media there because I think that one probably stands out from other platforms. It's probably the most different. So on social media, you've got a lot of people who you would call news avoiders, and then separately you've also got a lot of younger people, right? And so I think it's pretty obvious to say people aren't on social media for news, but they will consume news and important climate stories if it comes their way and if you deliver it in the right way. So people on social media want things to be punchy. They want it to be entertaining, conversational, and they want it to hook them in quick, right? You've got to beat the scroll on, the 3-second rule. I was asked to touch on an example of how I engage younger audiences with climate and natural disaster coverage, and I would say platform is a huge consideration in this. I actually get more people today recognising my work or seeing my work from social media than I do from traditional media. So it's a really great tool, I think, for reaching that wider audience who aren't, you know, typically watching the news or something like that. And I would say if you want a younger audience, you've got to go where the younger people are. You've got to ask the questions that younger people want to know, and you've got to deliver it in the style that younger people are used to. which brings me to my final observation, and probably the most important one, and it kind of extends on some things Vienna said as well before me, which is that being in the community matters. So this is more about how you achieve those points, right? So when you're thinking about posing curious questions or telling people-driven stories or knowing what people are talking about and when to talk about it, they all rely on you being in touch with what's being talked about. So a lot of my stories come from, Facebook communities that I'm a part of, but also just like listening to what people in my life and my social circles are talking about and asking about. And so that's why I think it's really important to have reporters, not just in different locations around Australia for me or, the world, but also of different ages and different backgrounds. If you want younger people, don't just speak to younger people, have younger reporters, because no one knows younger people better. If you want a more diverse range of views and a more diverse audience, hire more diverse staff, because that way you're going to be in tune with the needs of the community and you're going to be able to deliver what different audiences are looking for. Thank you.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Ms. Stein. So, turning to the community communications, so Ms. Sonali from the Child Fund Sri Lanka, and she will families. So, Ms. Sonali.
For the past 5 years, I have been working with development sector, corporate sector, and IT field. But when I was diverting my career to development sector, I realized my job is not just communication; it's translation. Translating the language of the vulnerable communities, the fragile communities, into a language that is much more heard and all the world wants to listen to. Let me start with one such story. Imagine you are 15-year-old in Monaragala and the sun is scorching, the fields are dry, and for weeks there's no drop of rain. And you are walking miles with your friends, Amma or the mother, and aunties to have some water, to collect some water. And the worst part is you are on your period. This was the story of her. She didn't stay silent though. She organized with her friends and teacher and advocated and discussed with the government authorities and made sure that her village is a part of the government water supply scheme. This is not just a drought-related story. This is the story of a voice, an advocate, about how climate change affects children and communities who did the least but suffer the most from climate change. In many parts of Sri Lanka, children are growing up amidst droughts, floods, landslides, and so on. According to the global snapshot of climate-related school disruptions in 2024 by UNICEF, in South Asia, 128 million students are affected by climate-related school disruptions, with heat waves as the leading climate hazard in terms of both frequency and impact. In the same year, 115,306 students in Sri Lanka were affected by flood. So, climate change is not just an environmental issue. It's a child rights issue, a gender issue, and most importantly, a communication issue, because when some voices are not heard, the solutions remain incomplete. We believe the fight against climate change should start with the people who suffer the most, the children and youth. To reach the fragile communities, Child Fund Sri Lanka have been using a few communication tools up to now. So namely, youth-led advocacy and storytelling, creative arts and street drama, structured youth networks and platforms, learning and empowerment, integration. At the national level, we launched a youth-centric analysis of Sri Lanka's NDCs, a landmark study, where the youth was the center of the climate agenda. In this NDC report launch, youth did not just participate, they led the conversation. Let me tell you about a few of those youth that engaged with us and shared their story. First one is Arosha. He is from Batiklo, he is from Putlam. He's a part of the Relax Youth Club, and in the last year, he represented Sri Lanka at the COP29 in Baku, sharing his community story on a global platform. Before that, he was speaking in the National Summit of Climate Action, and he was doing nature camps in his area. From a rural area like Karola Gasawa in Putlam to an international audience, that's the power of the voice of youth. Let me tell you another story from Batiklo. She's Niruja. Youth like Niruja are using their art club, Thodavanum Art Forum, to communicate climate issues through street drama campaigns. So in Child Fund Sri Lanka, through partnerships with youth networks and making sure those youth are heard is our responsibility, is our mission. But here's the thing, giving young people the stage is very easier said than done. When talking about the youth, they are in a perfect storm. When we conducted our national study, the youth-centric analysis of Sri Lanka's NDCs, we discovered that over half of the young people we spoke to had barely even heard of the climate agendas that taking place in Sri Lanka, which decide their future. Imagine that. And what's the reason for that? Because in communities battling daily survival, where a parent's priority is the next meal, not the next climate change or the next climate summit, information is a luxury. How do you talk about reducing carbon emission when you have to walk 5 miles to collect some water? The barriers run deeper. We found young people facing what I call the invisible walls. First, there are the structural walls complex of government systems that feel like fortresses that they cannot overlook. Then there are the socio-economic walls, the simple lack of smartphone, the data, or the time to contribute to these climate-related agendas when you are helping your family to farm a parched field. But perhaps the most heartbreaking wall out of these three is the wall of love-pursued agency. The silent, crushing belief that my voice doesn't matter. That climate change is a problem for scientists to solve, not a problem for a child or a teenager from Monaragala to solve. So in this landscape of scarcity and silence, how do we break through? We don't bring a megaphone. We have given them a mirror to understand their own potential. Through our communication efforts at Child Fund Sri Lanka, we have shown them their own potential and the power and how they can contribute. Let's go back to the first story that I mentioned, the girl from Monaragala. Her name is Ayodhya. A few years ago, she fought for water for her village. Today, she is studying media and communication at University of Kelaniya and is a part of IVAC, a youth network supported by Child Fund Sri Lanka that champions climate action, child protection, and youth empowerment. Today, she is using her voice and the power of media to ensure other girls never go through what she had to went through. Ayodhya's journey, Arosha's leadership, and Niruja's creative touch to this burning issue tells us one thing. When children and youth are given the freedom and the stage, they don't just tell stories, they transform them into solutions. They become the agents of change that we desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonali. It's very good example from the ground level. So now I would like to invite Mr. Arus Arus will share about youth perspective on making climate reporting relevant and inclusive for all.
So, distinguished guests, my presentation focuses importance of making climate and disaster risk reduction accessible to all communities. As youth journalists, we play a vital role in bridging information gaps and ensuring climate messages reach people of every age, religion, and abilities. So I'll highlight how youth are reshaping climate communication, the barriers we navigate, and what can be done to empower our contribution even further. Right. So youth communication is very powerful because it meets people wherever they are, right? We understand that digital rhythm of young audiences, whether it's visual, short form videos or interactive content, and we use these tools to make climate stories more accessible and engaging. So our presence in villages, schools, grassroots levels and online communities allow us to bring forward stories that are often missed by the mainstream media. That makes youth reporting inclusive. We also rethink traditional storytelling. We make it new. We innovate youth-led stories. We turn complex climate science into creative, easy-to-understand formats. And most importantly, we give space to marginalized voices, from disabled communities to women and the informal sector workers, ensuring climate communication represents those who are most affected and most needed. This is why youth-led storytelling is reshaping our climate issues and are acted upon. So as young communicators, we are motivated and ready to tell climate stories, but the ground reality is completely challenging. It's a different story. Now, climate science is full of technical terms. It's too scientific. And simplifying them while staying accurate takes a lot of time. And we need guidance at use. So we also struggle with limited access to climate data, scientists and experts, which affect the deep depth of our reporting. Another barrier is that many young audiences experience disaster fatigue. They always connect and they get really tired when accessing the information and all. They scroll past climate content because it feels overwhelming. There are also geographic, social and digital barriers that prevent us from reaching vulnerable communities. It's not easy for us to reach vulnerable communities due to various reasons. So, and despite our enthusiasm, youth-led climate reporting often lacks the mentorship, training, institutional support needed to grow. So those things authorities should focus upon. These challenges show why empowering young voices is essential for strong, more inclusive climate communications. Right. And first most, what we need is capacity building. We need continuous training and mentorship. Climate science, data interpretation, digital first storytelling are evolving rapidly. Climate reporting requires technical knowledge, and structured training makes our stories accurate and responsible. Without proper upskilling, youth are forced to depend on guesswork or oversimplification. So information should be very clear and should be simplified, right? And media organizations can help by investing in capacity building, training. Second, let's come to editorial encouragement. Young journalists need editorial encouragement, like basic resources. We as youth journalists, institutional support things like access to equipment, transport for field reporting, and the freedom, especially freedom to pursue youth-focused climate perspectives. Many young journalists have ideas. Many young journalists have ideas, I'm sure of that. But editorial priorities or lack of resources limit what actually can be produced. So, resources is a problem for the youth that they are emerging. So, that should be concerned by the authorities. When it comes to media organizations, must give a platform for youth voices. Space in mainstream channels, not just social media. So when youth stories appear only in social media corners, their impact is limited. So youth can do a huge impact when it comes to climate-led storytelling, right? So national broadcasters, right? National broadcasters should highlight youth-led climate reports in mainstream bulletins. It signals that our youth perspectives are valued. We need strong collaboration with scientists, disaster management authorities, and community organizations. We should have a link, right? We also heavily rely on experts and verified information, and that should be. And easier to access these sources should strengthen the credibility of youth reporting. So media houses should create inclusive and youth-friendly newsrooms. Young communicators need to freedom to innovate environment and encourage experiments. Youth like to experiment new stories. So they should be given the space, like animations, maps, short stories or short explanations, bilingual content to reach various audiences. Supporting youth journalism it's not a charity, it's a complete investment. When young communicators are empowered, the entire communication landscape becomes inclusive, more creative and ultimately more effective. For youth, reporters contribute meaningfully. We need more passion. We need support systems. The most important thing is we need support systems, especially to reach marginalized communities. So then I need to highlight why youth voices are not just useful, but essential in climate and disaster risk communications. And by the way, these are AI generated images. When I asked Gemini or the ChatGPT to create certain images, a young journalist reporting disaster storytelling, and the AI created a young journalist with a DSLR camera. Certain images that, AI needs to be given certain information which is accurate, or else they will create certain, default news. But when it comes to youth voices, it's essential in disaster risk communication. Young communicators bring energy. And we do courage and creativity that traditional media sometimes lack. We are not afraid to experiment or to innovate or to tell stories. We are always innovative, and that space should be given. Youth brings a perspective that is fresh, creative and deeply connected to the realities of our generation. We also act as a bridge between scientists and the public, taking complex climate information and turning into simple, relatable and content that people can understand and act upon. So what scientists have technical terms, youth-led stories can help to reshape that storytelling and narrative and bring something which is simplified that the audiences can understand. Youth reporting has proven powerful in bringing marginalized communities at risk. Whether it's rural children affected by drought, information exposed to floods, or disabled groups struggling with evacuation access. So media organizations finally should invest upon youth. They are investing in future of climate communication, a future that is more inclusive and more accessible. Right. And finally, I must say that youth are a creative, powerful force in our society. We cannot ignore that fact. So we can create powerful stories. We just need space and resources that we can do a great impact. So it is not only through collaboration with media organizations, experts, policymakers and communities. It's about a collective engagement. We are committed to telling stories that include every community. every voice and every lived experience affected by climate disasters. So my final message is, together as youth, a collaboration, we can build a climate communication ecosystem that is inclusive, scientifically strong, and accessible to every citizen. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Aris, for your sharing. Now I would like to invite myself.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So I was advised to give only a 5 minutes to 6 minutes presentation. So I will try my best to conclude in 6 minutes. Okay, so as I have mentioned earlier, Uni Global Union represents 20 million workers through 900 affiliated unions across 150 countries. And in Asia Pacific, we represent 2 million workers in 20 countries. Our members works in diverse sectors including finance, IT, ICTS, commerce, post and logistics, graphical and packaging, gaming, care, agency work, property services, and media, entertainment, and arts. UNI has established cross-sector groups to raise standards in issues affecting working people across job title and industry, and one of them is the Equal Opportunities Department. At UNI Equal Opportunities, together with our affiliates, we build worker power and work to create innovative responses to the global issues we face, and celebrate and encourage diversity, pushing hard for strong, diverse, and equal workplaces all over the world. So just to give you a glimpse of what we're doing at Equal Opportunities, let me share with you some of our highlights in our work. To achieve sustainable development and true social justice for everyone, we need gender equality and investment in youth. Globally, participation in trade unions, particularly by young people and especially by young women, is already very low and even decreasing. The marginal presence of youth leaders in trade unions results in little power. In most countries, this creates generational imbalance between the magnitude of youth problems and the extent to which trade unions pay attention to them. But transformation can come as one small, simple yet great idea, the mentoring. Mentoring is about supporting an exchange of ideas and intergenerational dialogue to build and strengthen skill between people. So it is about providing guidance and support as well as transferring knowledge. 12 years ago, the Uni Equal Opportunities and Uni Youth launched its first mentoring pilot program with a group of 18 women working in tandems back in 2013, and has reached almost 5,000 women and youth, built over 800 tandems, and expanded throughout 66 countries. Out of all the programs we have carried out, which build up to more than 70% of the workshops, Asia Pacific has the largest investment in 3 different programs. The first one launched in 2015 for the APRO region, which included Malaysia, Philippines, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Vietnam, and Malaysia, followed by a 3-year program focusing on South Asia and Southeast Asia, as well as the national workshops here in Sri Lanka, India, and Bangladesh. And finally, we have a new project starting last year with a national focus on Thailand, Indonesia, and Philippines, which will cover for the next 4 years. Through the mentoring, Uni Equal Opportunities has helped build the mentor and mentee, or what we call the tandems, across regions, focusing on skills such as communication, leadership, negotiation, and addressing issues like violence and harassment in the world of work, occupational health and safety with a gender perspective, climate, and women's representation in Uni Global Union. Here are some facts on the mentoring program. We have trained over 1,200 women in over 71 workshops. We also have reached 4,200 women through our activities related to mentoring. We have created 803 tandems, and it covers the 66 countries in 125 unions participating. And the overall, 38% of the mentees, or the young workers in leadership position, were elected in leadership position after the program. We also have some manuals in our Equal Opportunities Department that we share with our members, such as the Occupational Health and Safety with a Gender Perspective. We launched this in 2023. We have also launched a manual on the 3Ms campaign, which covers the menstruation, maternity, and menopause, because these issues are trade union issues too. We have also launched a manual on mental health, and it's one of the fundamental rights at UNIM. And after UNI adopted a resolution on climate, UNI incorporated climate issues in the workshops for young workers. And I would like to highlight this workshop we had on building a sustainable future last year, wherein around 60 young workers from all over the world joined the 3 days workshop in our headquarters in Lyon to discuss climate and its impact in our sectors and how we as unions can help build a sustainable future for young workers. So we went over the basic concepts of climate change, environmental concept, and the impacts of our actions and inactions to our environment, and differentiated impact in terms of gender, class, age, and countries. And we also started to discuss the different actions we can start to take and protect our world. So this workshop aimed to empower young workers, equipping them with tools and knowledge to advocate for a sustainable future. So it's important to mainstream the issues of climate change and consider it across all lenses. Climate energy highlights and disproportionate impact on the crisis we have on women, people living with disability, and most vulnerable global citizens. So if you're interested to learn more about our work and campaigns that I have mentioned, you can visit our website and our social media accounts. So again, on behalf of the UNI team, thank you ABU for inviting us, and thank you delegates for your opportunity to share our work in your summit.
Thank you, Michelle, for your wonderful action for making inclusive climate action NDRR. So now I would like to take just two questions from audience to the respective speaker. If you have any specific question to a specific speaker, please. We have 5 more minutes to. Is there any questions? Okay, please. Please.
Just, I have very short question, like maybe the young guy journalist can answer, like what are the initiative you are taking just to include all the school or college, university students in these activities and these things to make them inclusive? Any special project you have taken so far?
Test. Of course, as Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, we have initiated many programs in rural and urban level. We have gone to many universities and created awareness in disaster management and in awareness of youth regarding various climate challenges that are facing. So we are trying our best to reach all marginalized communities. We have taken great steps joining the government and with Clean Sri Lanka program under the present government, of course. And even in the past, Sri Lanka Rupavahini has done a collaborative effort with the rural engagement, university students and marginalized group in the north and as well as in the southern areas. So there were many workshops we have conducted. So about climate changes and different, let's take like climate stories and the changes, weather patterns and all. We have done many awareness programs, if you had mentioned. So that is what we have initiated as Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation. For the past 20 to 30 years, we have done that initiative.
Okay, I think there is no further question. Okay, Ms. Malik.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentations. I don't have a question, but I have a small intervention since no one has questions, so I'm not taking anyone's space. I just, first let me introduce myself. My name is Mali Hazaz. I'm the Regional Advisor for South Asia for Communication Information. I'm based in Delhi, and I'm pleased to see you all, and hopefully we'll be working together very soon. I just want to share one quick comment and something that we've realized during last year's World Press Freedom Day. We have realized that when we talk about climate change, environment, disaster, it's a bit of a very technical topic, and a lot of people don't know enough about, sometimes because they don't have the background, the expertise to really understand it, right? And same goes, for example, for when the journalists, the investigative journalists, write those reports. They sometimes spend years working on investigation, and the reports are so lengthy. While they're very important, a lot of people would not go and read them, especially the youth, but also maybe someone who's not really an expert. So basically, one of the ideas, and I thank you for the work you're doing with the youth, because you have to be really innovative, creative. What we've done is we had an exhibition where we introduced investigative journalists to artists. And what they've done together is that they worked together to create art installations. So they translated all those investigative reports about climate change, disaster, into a nice installation. So it attracted people's attention. They ended up coming, asking what it's about, really taking the time to learn about that. And a lot of people left afterwards really understanding this climate change issue in one region or the other. So I just want to reiterate that it is important to be creative, to have this cross-sectoral work, because that is what encourages people to learn more, and sometimes things come indirectly, right? So yes, I encourage you for the work you're doing, and hopefully we can come up with more creative ways to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are running out of time. So as we come to the end of the sessions, I have a few takeaways from these discussions. Inclusion in climate and DRR communication is a lifeline. When we bring together youth, women, persons with disabilities, indigenous people and remote communities, we don't just build messaging, better messaging. We build a stronger, more resilient society. So empowering youth, women through mentoring, building leadership capacity, not just a representation. Youth are not just an audience. They are the vital partner or actor for the climate action and DRR. Through digital storytelling and media, they amplify marginalized voice and make climate information accessible to everyone and build a resilient, inclusive media for future together. And same as children also. They are one of the change agents for the future resilience and for the sustainability. They don't just tell the story, they transform themselves also. So they are one of the key actors for the climate change, and that's why we have to work in the school and the community through school-based DRR and climate change. Similarly, a diverse media team and platform help us reflect all communities, connect meaningfully and understand what people care about. When we go to the community and talk, just ask about what are the climate change impact, they cannot tell the story. You have to talk in their own language. You can talk with them, what is the change of rainfall pattern, how is the temperature 10 years or 20 years back and now, what is the cropping patterns, what is the change on the cropping calendars. So if we discuss that way, they can understand. But if we go to the community and just ask, they cannot understand. But they have a rich knowledge. We need to speak in their language. That's I think that's the way we have to discuss, and we have to cover every community so that they can learn more and they will not be left behind. So today's discussion reminds us that communication is not just transforming information, it's about ensuring understanding, trust and equitable access. No one is safe until everyone is informed. So let's work together to ensure that when next cyclone comes, no one is left in the dark. So thank you all. I hope you enjoyed the session and also the next session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krishna. It was a very powerful and insightful conclusion of the session. We will have a photo shot. So, Biena and Tyne, thank you for joining us remotely from Thailand and from Australia. Just please stay online, so we will take a shot. Okay, done. Thank you so much, and see you next time, hopefully in person. Bye-bye. Now we will break for 30 minutes coffee break, and after that we will have a last session for today, which is battling climate misinformation, the media's role in protecting truth and public trust. So please grab your coffee, refresh, and come back for the last session of the day. And we will have some housekeeping announcement after that. And please, for international delegates, for foreign delegates, there are some goodies for you at the registration desk. Please don't forget to collect them too.
Nila Bank Sahakaru. The BOC multi-currency travel card. Lanka. Endless adventures.
Sabra Anukrahaya.
And it is essential for broadcasters to responsibly shape the information and the news and the content. So we speak about the role of broadcasters in the information ecosystem. We are a public broadcaster, so we all understand the importance of delivering trustworthy and reliable information. And we have been talking about this, whole day, how the media's role in delivering all kinds of information related to the climate change, disasters, and it's also about media and information literacy. It is about how we understand, for instance, scientific information, very complicated, and how we transform it into more human-related and deliver it to audience. And media information literacy is also about recognizing what is misinformation, what is disinformation, and deepfakes, and how we deal with that. Especially now with all the AI created content, it's getting more and more important to be more responsible. So I don't want to take a lot of your time because I have a lineup with a very good experts who I would like to join me on the stage. Mali Hazaz, she is a regional advisor for South Asia UNESCO Delhi office. Dilrukshi Handuneti, she is a director of the Center for Investigative Reporting, Manga Bay, Sri Lanka. And Varinder Gambier, she is a country director, BBC Media Action, India. So as you see, I am joined by all the ladies for the last session. So yeah, I would like to start with the same question to you as experts. How do you understand media information literacy and why it is important to speak about it with the broadcasters and media people?
Okay, so first, thank you for bringing us here together. I know it's the last session. You all look a little bit tired, but we promise to make this interesting, hopefully. Well, I think the concept of media information literacy is becoming broader and more complicated in a sense. Before, when we used to mention media information literacy, we would immediately think of schools, right? Of young youth and students. But I think that age is gone, where we only think of media information literacy as formal and sometimes informal education. It has expanded. I don't know how many of you have heard about, for example, media information literacy cities, MIL cities. So it's not only in education, and that's why we're talking here about its role in media, but also at the same time, media covers different aspects, including climate change, disaster. So that's why I'm telling you it applies to a lot of things that were not the traditional sense of media information literacy. So I would say media information literacy is, just think about it in terms of allowing us to be critical users and producers of media and have the digital skills that will allow us to interact with media, but also for the best interest of ourselves and our communities.
Thank you. Varinder?
So yeah, I think building on that, as well as I think the answer that we heard from the audience earlier as well, I think it is, of course, what, literally it seems like it is the information that we're trying to come up on media and trying to literate people on, it could be any theme. So media information literacy doesn't have to really be about climate change. It could be about gender. It could be about health. But I think it's important to understand that we now need to not just look at the literal meaning, but how are we beating the fake narratives, and is media information literacy really just about passing the right information out, or it is now about engaging the audiences so that there is some work happening on whichever theme you're working on. I think that's how I would talk about media information literacy, because it is not just now anymore about literacy or awareness. It is now going beyond that and engaging your audiences to then act, or there has to be behavior change, or whatever topic you're working on.
Thank you. And Dilrupji?
Thank you.
You just came back from the big forum.
I have a horrible host throat. I think it's about learning and understanding how we assess information, what kind of information we want to relay, how responsibly we relay that information, how much and when. These are critical questions, things that we should answer as people who work in the media education sphere. But it is not limited to the media fraternity. Peace for everyone who inhabits this earth. We put out content and expect people to consume it. So there is also a responsibility and a need to identify and use the same tools to assess and build trust, and look at what is disinforming them, misinforming them, and making an informed choice about the information you wish to consume.
Thank you for this. And my distinguished panelists, they have prepared their presentations, some slides, and we start with Mali. She will give us kind of overview of media information literacy policy integration in media.
Okay, I'm not that short, but not too tall, so okay, you can't see me behind maybe yes, that's much better, thank you, behind the nice flowers. Perfect. Okay, so, again, as my colleague said, media information literacy has become a much broader concept. And we're not going to, I think this requires a full event, but today we just have this session and would like to at least share with you some of the things that would be useful for you as media, as organizations as well. Sharing some of the good practices, some of the latest resources as well that we have introduced as UNESCO. And today it's not going to be only about media information literacy, because you cannot look at media information literacy without looking at other components, because let's say we want youth to be critical, or the users to be critical thinkers, for them to whatever information they receive and then whatever information they produce to be critical thinkers, right? Let's take the example of COVID. If you wanted to be a critical thinker to whatever information you reshared, we say fact check, we say before you share information, you have to also think about it, you have to be critical. But how can you be critical if you don't have access to information? So MIL, media information literacy, is very much linked to access to information. So when we discuss media information literacy, we have to also think of the people's right to access information, because you cannot make decisions, you cannot be critical without having access to information. Same with you having freedom to express yourself, the freedom of expression. So it's a very broad topic, and that's why today we're going to just maybe keep it a little bit limited to some, at least, concepts and slides that I want to share with you. Luckily, globally, we have seen that there is a growing recognition of media information literacy, how important it is. However, unfortunately, only 17% of UNESCO member states have standalone media information literacy globally. So we see the interest, but we don't see the action. And also, in addition to that, we have a number of member states who have standalone policies, while many others only basic digital skills. They look at digital skills as a priority, but not the whole concept. So we see still a lot to be done. For media information, for media organizations in particular, it is also important, because again, for some time, it was always limited to education, to schools. We never really considered how media can play a role. And when I say media information literacy in schools, policies for media, I'm not saying for us to have an article about media information literacy. When we teach literacy, when we say literacy, not media information literacy, you teach people how to read and write, right? So when it's teaching media information literacy, you don't tell them what is media information literacy. And I've seen this in a lot of curriculums for schools as well. It's, I think, the wrong approach. So we have to also make sure for media, when we integrate into our policies, that we follow the right approach. What is important is for media organizations, why is it indispensable? It restores public trust. because we're talking about countering misinformation as well, right? What else is important here? We have the AI digital innovations, and that is also making it more and more difficult for us to know what's misinformation, what's not, with the deep fake, with all of these digital advancements that we have. So it's becoming more and more important for media. Now, just to mention some of the collaborations we've had recently. UNESCO has collaborated with ABU, with the Asian Pacific Broadcasting Union, the World Association for News Publishers, WANIFRA. We have also had recent collaborations with AMARC, which is, AMARC stands for International Association of Community Radios. And just to say that these actions include leadership training for 1,800 media professionals and leaders so far. We've also worked with mentoring 140 media outlets in 50 countries, and we've created some tools. But again, a lot of the results and outcomes are not there, so we have to look beyond that and what we can do together. There's one toolkit, we can share with you later the links if interested, called the Multimedia MIL Toolkit for Media, and it provides policy guidance. If you're interested to really introduce that into media outlets, it provides you with ethical checklists and case studies as well in a number of countries. So, tackling misinformation. There's a course as well that was introduced recently, and it's UNESCO's new free online course on tackling climate disinformation, and this was done with our Mahatma Gandhi Institute. This is very interesting. It could be used by youth, by the public, but also for media. It's a very interesting course, and I advise you to look at UNESCO's online courses. A number of them also are for media information literacy, for climate change, for disaster, and all of these are free, accessible. And I think some youth, knowing now, seeing my kids applying to universities, a lot of us are happy also to have extra credit, whether it's youth and universities, whether it's media. But it is also something you could do at your own pace, so you can learn more about it. If you wish to have any of the links, we can share with you later. This is an important global initiative that was introduced quite recently. It was launched by UNESCO, but also with Brazil, the UN, and the G20 2024. And this is a global initiative. It was for the first time at COP that the issue of information integrity was discussed. Because when we talk about information, when we say counter disinformation, it's the information integrity that is important. And this year, it was the first time that this was introduced and discussed, and after that, this global initiative was launched, and there was the Global Fund financing evidence-based projects that was launched. So far, 13 countries are receiving funds from that fund. So if you're interested as well, this is one area where you can check their call for proposal and apply for funding. We have received 500 plus proposals for 100 countries so far, and since COP20 there are 10 projects already funded, including some in Asia Pacific. What is the path forward? First, we need to scale MIL integration across media outlets, and this is why we're discussing this and getting together here. Equipping journalists with climate disinformation resilience, and expanding country participation in information integrity initiatives. We have another session tomorrow where there will be a model plan that is launched for media. My colleague Marco will be introducing it, and we'll have some very interesting activities. But I think what is important here before I end is that we cannot look at media information literacy separate from any other work that we're doing. When I mentioned the MIL cities before, we see that nowadays our world is becoming all about, everything is online. Our banking is online, our health, sometimes we have not only appointments that we used to get them online, but now you even have the consultation online. So think about the public in terms of, we have the seniors who are becoming so disconnected from life because if they do not master those digital skills, they'll be disconnected. If they do not understand media information literacy, some sort of fact checking, they could be scammed, they could lose all their savings. So media information literacy, again, when we say media information literacy cities, we have to think of all sectors, and it starts with media. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mali. So now we move to investigative journalism and climate. And I would like to invite Dilrushki, who will share the lessons from the investigative reporting during the climate events and the importance of verification and media information literacy for journalists. Oh, oops. It's okay. Yeah, all good. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Thank you for having me. And though I'm not feeling too well, I'm very happy to be here because just 2 days ago, the newsroom I work for was celebrated at the Global Investigative Journalism Conference. It won the Global Shining Light Award for our consistent, good multimedia reporting on climate and environment. I work for Monga Bay. Thanks. So one of the things that we often say is that we are often getting to a story, and particularly climate/weather stories, and we often end up doing ambulance chasing. And when you're information literate, and when you're a truth seeker, and you are wearing your critical thinking cap, it makes life so easy to sometimes wade through the disinformation, misinformation, to become journalists or storytellers like an early warning system. So I think that's my first point, that I want to say that we should be that. Now this one is a messy one. I work with a lot of Sri Lankan journalists and across the world. You asked for a story pitch, and I think this is about media literacy and information literacy and all of that. These two words always have some issue. Weather versus climate, environment versus climate reporting. We still have a situation where people make a hell of a mess with the words. So I think that is from there we are talking about the need to be literate when you want to do that. I became a journalist to be able to write on and report on environment. Many things may have happened subsequently in the last 25 years, but that remains my passion. So still when you have people in our foundational courses of information literacy, which we run, we end up having to explain these two. So I did put this slide. I'm not asking for answers. The fact that long-term, change in weather plus what is immediate is still a problem in newsrooms. Still, sometimes people don't know. So I'm looking forward to a resource so that there's plenty that we could use. Again, weather stories are aplenty. Climate stories take a lot of effort. So storytellers also have challenges. One thing is about learning how to report on climate. To learn to report on climate change or environment, you need to have some introduction to science. So if you don't want to learn science, and a little bit of it at least, a smattering of it, you're going to find it very difficult to be able to communicate it. And then climate misinformation and disinformation has been identified as the key reason why we have to grapple with information and wade through the waters to find out what is propaganda, climate propaganda, what are the naysayers are saying, what are the proponents are saying, what is fact. So it's about fact and fiction as well. So and as reporters, we have issues about balancing impartiality. We always feel that, that we have to put that code, balance the story. What is balancing? You can't balance a story like that, because sometimes you bring a false sense of climate storytelling by taking fringe views. Let me give you an example quickly. Once I saw in a very reputed international publication website, it had a climate story. Climate change story. It had no scientists, but this story held, and I was flabbergasted. It had people sharing their climate experience, from farmers to local, people who are experiencing it. They are very vital. We talk about people, but you have to correct the science, without which there is no future. And, actors and intent is the most important thing. Why is climate disinformation such a big issue for us? Most of the time, journalists are not only looking at manuals, not looking at scientific papers, but also trying to see who is giving this information? Why are they placing this information out? So from far-right websites or naysayers to extensive lobbying by climate deniers or organized disinformants pushing some theories, we got to deal with all that. So the IPCC's 2022 assessment report recognizes that disinformation and misinformation around climate change is such a big issue that we need to know and worry about. So what are the tactics? This is for all the journalists in this room. Sorry, I'm almost looking backwards. So there is climate denial. That's fact. There are people who say there is no climate change happening because you can't put your finger and say this is climate change. And you need data for, that's the other question. When you ask for how long do you have to look for data to establish climate change, people sometimes don't know. People don't know. We're talking about not today, next month, next 3 years. We're talking a lot more, 30 years at least to start with. And then there's climate delay. Oh, because it's slow changing, it's a slow emergency and it's evolving over a period of time. So we can take some time. We don't have to look for solutions. Instead, let's look at the communities that need support. Communities need support, but we need to get the information out because it is a hell of an emergency and we are really dealing with it. Then we fall also susceptible, we are quite susceptible to greenwashing. Companies come and say, we do so much for climate change. Sorry. And then the worst possible thing is conspiracy narratives. There is always somebody saying, oh, this is not really happening, but it's somebody's conspiracy. My last section is about source verification. Thank you so much, and I'm really sorry. I do apologize. Yesterday I had no voice, but I'm here today. So connecting climate change to local personal impacts and everyday topics is the way to go. Here are some best practices. Maybe it's highly relatable for us. How do we investigate and use data? This remains a real problem because people don't know how to look at climate data and unpack it. So these are some instructive or supportive pointers. Collaborate with experts. We are not scientists. We are communicators. We just need to talk to those who know, those who are not peddling misinformation. And there is a way to look for that also. And the formats have changed. We are more visual, less text. Be consistent. At the end, there has to be a human face. We have to talk about people when we talk about climate change. And how do we find a source? The good source, I just said there are scientists who do lobbying work, who do paid science papers. So to do that, you have to understand, first maybe some sources would be, IPCC would be my go-to place. It gives you the global picture. WMO may be the second source. Look for official sites. Look at metadata. Do cross-validation. Check from multiple sources whether this is going to hold. Check for peer-reviewed papers, manuals. Look for long-term trends. Okay. This is from the Truth Sandwich. It tells you how to debunk a climate misinformed bit of information. Take the fact. Be wary about the myth. We are myth peddlers. Sometimes. Sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. Explain the fallacy. Explain this is not true because this is how it is. So I've brought you some examples from the stories we did. 3 stories. This is about Sri Lankan communities impacted by climate change. When I became a journalist, I thought climate migration was not Sri Lanka's reality because we never reported on it. We thought it was happening in India, it was happening in Bangladesh. And then it came home. People are leaving places
leaving their jobs. Sorry, this is in the northern part of Sri Lanka, in Mullaitivu, a coastal district which is consistently going underwater now. It wasn't so a few years ago. Let's say 20, 30 years ago, this wasn't the case. And then Colombo is having the urban heat island effect. But nobody really worries about it because you don't necessarily know what it means to be living in an urban heat island. These are the stories we like. We like about stories. We worry about extinction, but we don't necessarily link it to climate change impact. And then my last example is about climate-induced migration. And this is data showing Sri Lanka's various climatic zones, how it is changing, how dry places are getting drier, wet places are getting wetter, and how it is becoming unpredictable. And we even spike wildfire risks in Sri Lanka, something we didn't really experience because of that. So this is because increased, we have a lot of people responsible for the forest fires, and then it connects to the climate impact. And this is what we have, a scenario where we do not have the ability to predict why something is happening, and also to see what solutions can we propose. My last thought is, to say we should not be naysayers in storytelling, we should be solution focused. And to be solution focused, we need to have climate literacy, and to be climate literate, we'll need the science as its core. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for, even despite being unwell, you still joined us and shared your insights with us. Thank you so much. So we move on to engaging communities, and I would like to invite Varinder Gambhir. She is the director of country director at BBC Media Action for India. So she will share insights on behavior change communication, community engagement, and building trust at the local level.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me and everybody is still awake. I know I stand between you and the tour, so I will not take too much time. I also want to just quickly make a point about how we started in the morning with lots of men on the panel. We started with menalists and we are ending with womenalists. So I think that deserves a round of applause for ABU as well to bring that balance back. So I think that's great. Just to very quickly say, I think everything that we heard in the last two presentations was, it was amazing to know how we approach, information and what needs to be done. My presentation or my talk is mostly about how we do it, and I hope that, I can leave you guys with some insights around that. Firstly, just a little bit about BBC Media Action. We work in 60 countries in 50 languages, and what's very, very important to us is not just reaching people, but also creating impact. And how we do it is that, at any point of time, bringing together the science, art, and craft of communication is very important. So when we talk about data, we talk about science, something that, she also mentioned that how do we humanize the stories, right? So that is something which is at the heart of what we do. Audiences are at the heart of everything that we do. And we never start any work without first doing immersions, which is understanding what are the lived realities of the audiences. Not just, understanding the information, myths, or what's happening, but it's also very, very important to understand their interests, their lived realities. So we do something called as immersions, which is when a multifunctional team will go to the field and understand who are the audiences that you're talking to. Are there segments within them? Because they will also, we understand human behavior, right? I mean, the same person might behave differently with a span of 2 to 3 days. And when we talk about human behavior and we're talking about so many people, it is important to understand their psychology as well. So research is something that guides us to do our communication, to create and produce work, as well as, strengthen the capacity of all the stakeholders. So working across the levels, which means working with the government, working with the practitioners, working for the communities, it's very important to, involve all the important stakeholders, as well as outreach. That's how you engage your audiences. That's how you build trust as well. So now, very quickly to leave you with the first insight is start with audience insights. So like I said, grounded data on your audience, what are they going through? Misinformation is not just about, when we are tackling misinformation, it is not just about debunking fake news or fake facts. It is also about understanding where your audience is. So this is just something, a segmentation which we had done some 7-8 years back when we were starting the work on climate change across 7 Asian countries. It's the world's largest study done on perceptions of people towards climate change. And there were no questions around what is climate change. It was really about how has your life changed in the last 5 years? What do you think about weather? And so, which is why we, got to know from farmers and fishermen how their life was changing. So it was all about what is personal to them, what is urgent to them, but talking to them in their language. Secondly, very important to build some kind of a translation layer between what the climate data is saying and how you're communicating it to the communities. Now, there are projects where we're actually talking to scientists, reporters in Nepal and Bangladesh, and BBC Media Action is coming in between to translate that scientific data and help the journalists, first of all helping the journalists ask those hard questions to the scientists, and then converting that data in a language that the audience will understand. So I think it's very, very important that we are doing that bit of translation, because I think I've heard it so much from everybody in the room since morning that the science is fine, but how is it that we are, bringing it back to the audience? Thirdly, can we occupy the digital space with engaging solutions first storytelling? Again, I think we heard in the panel that I think I was moderating earlier, where how do we keep the stories more positive? How do we keep them more solution-led? And, the digital space is, of course, getting more and more cluttered. So if we leave a vacuum, misinformation will fill it. But if we are anyways putting these positive stories out, if there is a lot of storytelling, if there is the right bit of content, we are making enough of counter narratives, I think there will be less and less misinformation. So I think it's very important that we are, coming together and producing the right positive content so that we can have engaging storytelling going on. And I will end with one of these examples from the city of Bangalore, where we are 12 organizations that have come together called Samuhika Shakti. And what's at the heart of this is that we are talking about waste pickers, and it's a project which is on the cusp of working for the environment, working on climate action, but also understanding a very important stakeholder, which is the waste pickers, and how they are the environment stewards who are helping the city keep it clean and helping the environment. So just one quick example, we've done this campaign called Wash the Dabba, which recently won the Gold Award, the Gold for Anthem Awards, which is, Anthem is almost, if I may say so, Nobel in the digital world. And we just got a gold for that campaign. So I will play the film that we had sent to Anthem. But what that campaign is about is bringing together the storytelling where there is a simple doable action for the people to act. And understand that the waste pickers who are at the heart of everything that we are doing, how you can help provide dignity to their livelihoods as well. So a simple act of washing your boxes after you finish your food and before you throw the boxes in your dustbin, if you just rinse it and throw it, that has become a big movement in Bangalore as of now, because 60% of the people who are exposed to the campaign, which is about 13 million people, 60% of that actually told us that they've started rinsing the boxes before they throw it in the bin. What that simple act does is when those boxes reach the waste pickers, they do not have to handle fungus and maggots and leftover food. The box is ending up not in the landfill but in a recyclable, it's recyclable, so it goes back to the factory. So it's helping the environment, it is helping the waste pickers build dignity in their livelihoods, and it's a very simple doable action for anybody who's taking action on it. And what it meant for us was to tell a story to people about the waste pickers, and that's how we could see a big change happening. I'll just play that film and leave you with that, and that's it. If it plays.
Bangalore loves its food. The bene dosa to biryani, the flavors linger on the tongue and on the box it arrives in. Thousands of food boxes discarded daily, unwashed, greasy, rotting and smelly. The leftovers don't disappear, someone has to deal with it. Someone like Mary, one of the Bengaluru's 22,500 waste pickers, are invaluable recyclers, sorting our mess. So we asked them what would help. That one small ask sparked a movement. Wash the dabba, a behavior change idea rooted in design thinking and human dignity, born from the lived reality of the most ignored, backed by the power of social storytelling. We didn't preach, we didn't guilt trip. We made the food messenger, an innocent idli, a gullible samosa that talks back.
Namaskara, Bengaluru. Did you wash the dabba?
Influencers sniffing leftovers and gagging on reels. Reels that hit 13 million views. We showed up at every touch point, from WeWork to bus shelters, from apartment groups. If there was a dabba, we were there. 136,000 food boxes carried it. 65 communities and 8 bus shelters amplified it. People sniffed, laughed, clicked, and most importantly, rinsed. 60% of citizen surveys started rinsing food boxes. 44% would spontaneously recall the campaign. Waste Pickers confirmed a noticeable change with cleaner food boxes. The campaign sparked citywide adaptations. From Coimbatore to Kerala, a food delivery unicorn echoed the message on its platform. Waste pickers were once called rag pickers, addicts, vagabonds. After Wash the Dabba, they were seen as superheroes, real workers, warriors, real influencers. Because when you restore dignity, you don't just shift perception, you shift power.
Thank you very much, Varinder. I have a question to Dilrushki. When you do the investigative journalism and reporting, do you have kind of like editorial checklist for yourself that where you put the answers and then you have the line up the questions that they have to answer to make this information that you deliver accurate to the audience?
Yes, we do, and that's a brilliant question. We have a verification checklist for reporters. They have to first file a story pitch, and then there is a verification list. For example, if you got some scientific paper, you have to give the bio of the researchers. If you got video, you have to add, this is not AI generated. Yes, we do.
Yeah, why I'm asking, because while doing this project with UNESCO, we designed ABU Media Information Literacy editorial checklist that has been just distributed to our colleagues. And if you have any feedback or any suggestions, or you may use the same editorial checklist in your newsrooms, or if you feel it is useful or maybe not, or maybe you have your own example, so please share, do share with us. It will be very valuable for us. Varinder, I feel like when we talk about all this climate related information, and we talk about a lot of the science, to be able to deliver accurate information, it feels like you have to become the scientist yourself, because you search so much information, especially scientific information. So how do you feel, what would be your approach? Again, we are talking about the human related information. What would be your approach when you say, okay, you personally would read this information and would ignore that information? What would be your kind of indicator?
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent question and a very difficult one to answer, but it's very important to bring the different stakeholders together. I think while it seems simple, but I think that's very, very difficult, because we understand, and I think you said that as well, that we are communicators. We are not scientists. But which is why it's very important to have somebody who's a technical expert guiding you, even when you're saying that, we are going to break up this bit about, we want to bring dignity back to the waste pickers. We want the world to know that they are helping the environment. We want people to wash the boxes, because so many tons of waste will not end up in the landfills, but you're saving so much of waste by, it being recycled, and that's how you're helping the environment. We needed to have an expert who's telling us all of those figures. So, for example, Hasrudallah works very closely with the waste pickers. So we were guided by that organization. At the same time, when we are working on textile recycling, we are ensuring that, because these are different aspects of climate work, we're ensuring that we are talking to the right stakeholders in the room, but we are the ones who are breaking it down for the audiences. Because audiences, we know that they, at the end of the day, unless they engage with the content, unless you give them a very simple, doable ask, because if you make it slightly difficult, nobody's going to act on it. So I think it is a balance where you bring in the right stakeholders and work together so that the science is being broken, everything is verified again and again. There is, the editorial standards of BBC are pretty stringent as well. So we are ensuring that each data point, if we are using any data point in communicating, many times we do, is verified. And there is always a technical expert who we are able to go back to and check with that this is what we want to communicate, and if that's all right. Yeah, maintaining that balance.
Yeah, thank you. Mali, you were talking about the toolkit that you have developed, UNESCO developed for media organization. What do you think? Why do you think it's important to have that kind of toolkit for the media? Because normally the toolkit, we feel like it's for kids, for the right, for education. But why do you think it's very important to have developed that kind of toolkit for the media organization?
Well, I think we should have when we talk to media, when we advocate for them to integrate MIL policies within their policies, within media outlets, no matter whether we're talking radio, TV, print, I think we have to have something more structured. It happens that many times, not only about this topic, but when you have trainings or you advocate, they tell you, but we need the tools. So this is one thing that we provide, which is more tangible, that media can use to operationalize MIL into their outlets. Having those checklists, for example, it will allow them to learn from other also case studies, use the checklist when they're working on an editorial context, but also it helps them to organize a workflow. And I think there's one more thing I want to add as well. When you work with media, you have to think of the various components. We talk about media information literacy, about media uncovering truth and countering disinformation about certain components, but sometimes when they're trying to counter that disinformation, it's not just the work that they do in the newsroom in terms of the checklist, in terms of knowing what are the fact-check tools and so on. What's also important is sometimes they put themselves in jeopardy when they do uncover those facts. And that is, I think, another component that we have to keep in mind, especially when we talk about investigative journalists. Because the topic, of climate change, as you said, is very sensitive at times. Sometimes it's linked to corruption. Sometimes it's linked to certain authorities. Maybe they don't want anything to come out in the news. Sometimes it's certain private companies and tycoons that they don't want to show that they're not doing the proper thing of how, they get rid of the toxic waste. So basically, when we talk about countering disinformation, when we talk about uncovering the truth, it goes beyond that checklist. I think we also have to work together in terms of organizations, media, and the public to also advocate for how important it is to protect those journalists to uncover that truth. And that is something that's really important. And a lot of times it's not very, very out there in the open that he's actually sent to jail because of this and that. Something can be fabricated, something can be. We've seen journalists who went to jail because of tax fraud, which we know they haven't done. Some are attacked. Women journalists in particular have been attacked online with specific kind of threats as well, sometimes things that will affect them and their families. So basically, I think we have to think of that factor. So it's the checklist, it's the training, it's the guidelines and the frameworks, but it's also when they do their job, how can we also protect those journalists for uncovering truth?
Yeah, the safety is really important. So wrapping up our sessions and the day, I would like to ask, what would be your 3 takeaways? Not only of this session, but you joined us, of course, later today, Dirushki, but overall, what would be your 3 takeaways for the media organizations? Focusing more on media information literacy, investigative journalism. Yeah.
I think verification needs to be embedded in our systems. First thing, we used to always verify, but now we also need to learn how to use digital tools. It's nothing special, it's mandatory. So I think that's one. Second thing is when you do stories and for newsrooms in whatever format, you have to put people first, always. Climate stories, for example, are very hard to communicate and because of the science, but credibility, accuracy and scientific rigor needs to be matched and married into each other. So that would be my second. And the third, I think you also should stop working in silos. Newsrooms love to work in silos and we compete with each other. But one of my biggest beliefs is that you de-risk when journalists work together as community. You're de-risking your communities, people that we call audiences, and we seek to serve them. And I think that's important, that they mitigate the impact on the industry itself by learning to work together, not see all this competition, there is competition, but also to see the synergies so that we can enrich our communities, serve them better, as communicators. Thanks.
Thank you. Varinda?
Okay, I think I said that earlier as well, but if we can bring together the science, art and craft for impactful storytelling, I would say this is one takeaway or 3 in 1. But science is, of course, very, very important, that we are backing it. And when we say science, it's not just the science from the climate scientists, it's also backing it with the science from the audiences, right? Understanding where they are, what are their lived realities. So that's what I mean by science. Art, of course, talking to their hearts and not just minds, right? So that's where you bring in the art of creative storytelling, so that you're talking to their hearts, so that they act on, whatever emotion you evoke in them. And then crafting of all of it together, to your previous question, that how do we work with the scientific data? That's the important craft of it all, right? That we have our theory of change, that this is the pathway we want to follow, this is the behavior we want to change. So that's, of course, very, very important. So which is why I would say bring together the science, art and craft in whatever important story that you want to tell.
Thank you. Mali?
I feel I'm going to be repeating what's being said because they're all pertinent points. Just a comment on the point regarding silos. I think within the same country that's important, but it's also important cross-regional. I think those cross-boundary collaborations are very important. Events like these are very important. We learn from each other's lessons learned, but mistakes. We can collaborate, and when it's a regional work, it's more impactful. Another important thing is all media outlets, I think we're past even thinking of, we're still advocating for media outlets to incorporate media information literacy policies. This is something that should be done. You seek support from different organizations that are here. And I think when we talk also about silos, I think I don't know if we have any authorities here, but I think authorities and governments have to also think of that. We still deal with governments, even or international organizations, and we deal either with the media, Ministry of Media, or the Ministry of, Environment, or things have to be done together. If we want to counter, disinformation and fight for information integrity about climate change, we work with media, we work with the environment ministries, we work with organizations working on DRR. Everything is interlinked, and these silos has to be really something that we really have to work on different levels.
Thank you so much. I will join all of you and in summarizing these 3 actions that we have to take. First of all, we all agree that media information literacy has to be integrated in the editorial policies of and decision making. we have to invest in staff training on misinformation, disinformation, and verification. And also, because it helps us to keep our core mission to deliver transparent and trustworthy information to our audience. Thank you for joining me today. Please take the UNESCO course that Mali introduced and also the toolkit. By the way, on 4th of December, we are doing the webinar with UNESCO on introducing this toolkit to media organizations. So we will share the link with you. Please join us for the webinar. And also another course on tackling the climate misinformation developed by the UNESCO. And also the checklist that we have shared. And please do share with us all your feedbacks or ideas. And thank you so much, ladies. It was a pleasure, and thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for staying with us until the end of the day. I think we finished on time, and you still have 30 minutes to refresh and join the city tour. This is a housekeeping announcement, and we announce it today with the help of our mascot that our host, SLRC, that has organized the city tour, and the buses will leave at 5:30 from the lobby. So please join. Thank you. And we will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp, we start the launching of the model. You want to announce it, Marco? He's my kind of co-MC for tomorrow. Yeah? Yes, please. You can announce.
Okay, so tomorrow morning we will have a half-day launch program for the UNESCO Model Disaster Preparedness and Response Plan for media institution that we have developed in cooperation with the ABU. It will have, welcome remarks from the ABU SG, a video message from our Assistant Director General, followed by an official launch ceremony, a case study sessions, and another multi-stakeholder dialogue sessions. And it will finish by a very interesting interactive session. It will be very interactive, so be prepared. Thank you. And looking forward to meeting you tomorrow.
Thank you, and see you tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, welcome to Colombo. We are pleased to invite all foreign delegates to join this evening's Colombo City Tour, offering a brief experience of the city's history, culture, and modern development. Colombo, with over 2,500 years of heritage, became the capital after 1815, and today stands as Sri Lanka's economic and cultural hub. Tour schedule. Departure, 5:30 p.m. from the hotel. Arrival, approximately 9:30 p.m. Please contact the help desk and be ready to board the buses. Tour highlights. Lotus Tower premises.